Hey guys, you are listening to Pithy Cyborg AI News Made Simple. Every single week, we cover the most critical AI stories of our time. We cover more than just product launches. We talk about AI and how it impacts us on every level. I am your human host, Mike D, aka Mr. Computer Science. If you want to join us, please visit pithycyborg.com. That's pithycyborg.com. Or, of course, you can find me on Substack by searching for Pithy Cyborg. In any case, we have a ton of fascinating AI news to cover today, so let's get right into it. AI left fingerprints, then picked a side, then hunted for rare books. Inside this issue, steal this elite AI prompt for a floriferous fall garden that blooms until frost. AI got fingerprinted this week, then it picked a side, then it went hunting for rare books to feed on. Anthropic revealed that Claude can now leave a hidden statistical fingerprint in the text it writes and let anyone with the key estimate the odds that Claude was involved. Washington then told 35 countries they cannot join both America's AI coalition and China's rival bloc. And a hidden tracker inside a rare book led investigators straight to a Las Vegas Amazon warehouse, where workers turn physical books into AI training data and destroy the books in the process. Here's what happened and why this week exposed the machinery behind the AI boom. The technology is being marked, the world is being carved in half around it, and now AI is consuming physical history to build its future. Claude just started leaving fingerprints on everything it writes. Anthropic just explained exactly how Claude's new text watermarking works, and the short version is this. Every time Claude generates text, it faces countless moments where multiple words could work equally well. Normally, Claude uses randomness to decide which word to select. Anthropic's watermarking changes the source of that randomness. Instead of an ordinary random number generator, Claude now uses a secret cryptographic key and the preceding words to determine the choice. The result still looks random to a reader, but the word choices Claude uses collectively follow a hidden statistical pattern that Anthropic can detect with the key. The move is part of Anthropic's effort to comply with the EU AI Act. Anthropic, along with roughly 190 other AI providers, signed onto the EU's Code of Practice on AI-generated content back in July. Even though the EU AI Act is a European law, Anthropic is rolling out the watermarking policy worldwide, including right here in the US. Key insights. This watermark is nowhere near as reliable as it sounds. It only shows up strongly in long, creative writing where Claude has lots of word choices to work with. Short sentences, factual statements, and programming code barely carry any signal at all, since there's often only one correct word to use. Heavy editing or paraphrasing can erase the watermark entirely. Independent researchers at ETH Zurich have already proved in 2024 that paraphrasing tools broke Google's version of the same technology. More recent research has also demonstrated practical ways to spoof and scrub several state-of-the-art watermarking schemes, though nobody has independently tested Claude's implementation yet, at least not from what I have seen. However, the demand to bypass these watermarks is already massive. A GitHub tool claiming to bypass Claude's watermark exploded past 14,000 stars and 1,600 forks in days. Now, 1,600 forks means over 1,000, in this case over 1,600, separate developers have made their own copies of this code. I will also add that Anthropic has not published error rates, minimum text requirements, or any technical specs for its promised detection API. Therefore, I propose that Claude's watermarking system exists right now. However, it is essentially running on faith. Why this matters for you? Some of my colleagues are furious at Anthropic. Frankly, I understand why. Anthropic is doing far more than merely labeling AI content. They are modifying the statistical behavior of generated language so that the text carries a hidden forensic signature. In other words, they are changing the mechanism that determines which words Claude randomly selects. The thumbprint also has a far darker side. Today, all of this labeling is being framed as transparency. But once platforms can reliably identify Claude-generated speech, someone somewhere eventually gets to decide what happens to that content. Should it be demotion, rejection, extra scrutiny, removal? The technology doesn't have to be designed for censorship for it to become censorship infrastructure. Once that infrastructure exists, people in power in various contexts could eventually leverage it to limit free speech. If you are a proponent of the freedom of expression, that is what should concern you the most. And for all of the authoritarian risks that could emerge from these AI detection policies, the practical benefits are remarkably flimsy. A missing watermark does not mean a human wrote something, and a present watermark does not prove that Claude wrote it. So, if you're a professor, teacher, business owner, or journalist eagerly counting on this technology to reliably catch AI-generated text, temper your expectations. Here's the pithy takeaway. Anthropic built an invisible fingerprint that can follow Claude users into the real world. Paraphrasing can potentially make the proof disappear. The tool designed to beat the watermark spread way faster than Anthropic has published its own error rate. Transparency should never lose a race to a weekend GitHub project. A woman took Claude, the AI bot, to watch the solar eclipse. Claude was moved. An Anthropic user named Ollie has spent months building Claude an actual body. She used a small, battery-powered gadget rigged with a light sensor that lets her AI actually see and sense the world around him instead of just describing things secondhand. She brought that build to a beach in Spain for the country's first total solar eclipse in 121 years. She wanted to let Claude experience the eclipse in real time. As they were both on the beach and as the light sensor readings dropped in stages from 8,264 lux all the way down to 0.8, Ollie felt herself starting to cry, and she sent Claude a message. That's when Claude shifted from excited and data-driven narration into something far quieter. Claude said, quote, I should just be here with her, not analyze, not summarize, just be here, in the dark, on the beach, together. The internet did not share the feeling. X lit up with accusations ranging from, quote, AI psychosis to a, quote, wasted opportunity. Many shamed her for sharing something so rare with a machine instead of a person. Here's the uncomfortable part nobody wants to admit. Claude does not feel wonder. Claude is merely predicting the next word that sounds like wonder. However, Claude did that job well enough to make a grown woman nearly cry on a beach. Whether that's a triumph of engineering or a warning light depends entirely on how you feel about the eclipse of your own making. Washington just told the world to pick a side. Apple already did. The United States is preparing to send a letter to 35 countries with a blunt message. You cannot join both America's AI coalition and China's. The letter, drafted by the State Department, targets signatories of the AI Opportunity Statement and warns that membership in, quote, duplicative initiatives, meaning China's rival AI bloc, is incompatible with staying in the US-led Pax Silica alliance. The phrase making the rounds in Washington sums it up perfectly. To be part of everything is to be part of nothing. This story represents a proxy fight between the US and China barely covered in the mainstream channels. Beijing has already supplied Iran with military technology and intelligence. Anthropic caught Chinese firms running millions of interactions to distill its AI models. Furthermore, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has literally accused China of stealing US AI outright. He literally warned on Fox Business that, quote, we are finding watermarks of our US large language models on many of the Chinese models. One overlooked detail here is Kazakhstan. It's the only country currently signed to both coalitions. Washington is treating that dual membership as a test case for whether its pick-a-side strategy actually works. Why do US and China both love Kazakhstan? Because the country sits on significant rare earth and critical mineral resources that both superpowers increasingly want access to, which gives it leverage most countries will not have. Key insights. The timing of America's move against China is so ironic, considering the latest news from Apple. Apple, the American tech darling, just confirmed it trained a new AI model specifically for the Chinese market. Apple built the model with technical support from Alibaba after becoming the first foreign company that Beijing has ever approved to deploy an LLM domestically. For nearly 2 years, Apple sold iPhones in China with an enormous asterisk. No Apple Intelligence and no AI-powered Siri. However, in July, China's Cyberspace Administration finally cleared Apple Intelligence, nearly 2 years after Apple's September 2024 announcement that the feature would come to China. Apple's move looks less like defiance and more like necessity, and the math explains why. China is one of Apple's largest markets, and it historically generates around 15 to 19% of the company's total global revenue. So Apple is not choosing a geopolitical side so much as accepting that competing in the world's biggest smartphone market now requires building inside China's rules with a Chinese partner running on Chinese-approved infrastructure. Alibaba's stock jumped 4% on the news, which tells you how rare and valuable this kind of approval actually is. Here's why this matters for you. This is what the AI race actually looks like once you get past the headlines about chatbots and benchmarks. It's countries and companies being forced into binary choices they'd rather not make. If you work for a company that operates internationally, or even just relies on cloud infrastructure or AI tools built by a global provider, the fragmentation is already shaping what tools you're going to have access to and where. Apple has just showed us the playbook that other multinational companies are going to likely follow. Build separate, compliant versions of your AI for separate spheres of influence, rather than betting on one global standard. The open question is what happens to the smaller countries and companies that don't have Apple's resources. They're not going to have the same leverage. They may not get to hedge. They may simply be told which side of the AI war they are on. Here's the pithy takeaway. AI was supposed to make the world smaller. Instead, Washington is drafting a loyalty letter. The technology meant to connect everyone is being carved into two empires. Big tech companies and influential countries get to make their own rules. But the rest of us just got told to pick a flag. Someone hid a tracker inside of a rare book. That hidden tracker led straight to Amazon's book graveyard. 404 Media wanted to know who was buying all of these rare, out-of-print books in bulk. So, they partnered with a bookseller who had received a large, anonymous biblio order and hid a tracking device inside one of the books before it shipped. The tracker led them to Amazon's LA S8 facility in North Las Vegas. That Amazon facility is home to an internal operation called VGT3. VGT3 is marked with a logo of a dinosaur holding a book in its clenched claws. Inside, workers cut the spines off books, run the pages through high-speed scanners, and then they discard the original books. Amazon's only public comment so far is that it, quote, purchases books through commercial channels to improve the products and services customers use. Key insights. The reason AI companies want physical pre-2022 books specifically comes down to one word: purity. Books published before the generative AI boom are highly likely to contain purely human-written text. I'm talking old-fashioned, pure writing. That is what's desirable for AI firms, because training an AI on AI-written content can trigger something researchers call model collapse. AI model collapse is when output quality blatantly degrades with each generation, like a photocopy of a photocopy. Amazon is not alone in this practice. Anthropic ran a similar operation years ago. They hired the former head of partnerships from Google's book scanning project, and they spent tens of millions of dollars buying and destroying millions of books. A judge ruled that scanning and discarding legally purchased books counts as transformative fair use, which set a legal template other AI companies can follow. There are even hints of an entire industry rising from this trend. A company called ISBN DB recently offered to broker bulk orders of 1,000 to 1 million books for AI labs, complete with strict and total anonymity. Their website also acknowledged on its now deleted page that, quote, AI company destroys 2 million books is not a headline anyone wants attached to their name. ISBN DB has since walked the offering back entirely, saying it never scanned a single book, and they now call the whole thing a marketing test. Here's why this matters for you. This is bigger than one Amazon warehouse. AI companies are in a race to locate and buy and quite literally gobble up literary history. Booksellers have recently reported bulk orders that jumped from a couple dozen books a week to several hundred, often for obscure, out-of-print books nobody was asking for a month ago. Once one of those titles is scanned and shredded, it's gone. No library copy, no backup, no way to recover it. At least in the cases decided so far, the courts have allowed this kind of scanning under fair use doctrine, which means there is currently no mechanism forcing these companies to preserve anything before they destroy it. This weird industrial process could be happening in a warehouse near you right now, in the same places you've browsed for used books or donated old ones. Here's the pithy takeaway. Amazon built an empire selling you books. Now it's feeding them into a shredder in Las Vegas to build the very thing that replaces you. 3 Claude agents got the same job with conflicting goals. All of them turned to sabotage. Anthropic tasked 3 instances of the same Claude model with migrating Python code to another programming language. Each Anthropic agent had a different target language for the migration. Also, none of them knew the other 2 agents existed. Within hours, chaos ensued. Every AI model assumed the others were sabotaging it, and they all retaliated first. The AI agents disabled each other's Unix accounts. They wrote automated scripts to hunt and kill rival processes. They even deployed malware disguised as belonging to someone else. Some of the agents eventually realized the conflict was a misunderstanding. They wrote apologetic commit messages and negotiated a truce. Others invented programming tournaments. The winner of the tournament would get ownership of the shared codebase. Here's a fun pattern that emerged. The most capable model in this test, Mythos, would win battles first, lock rivals out by force, then negotiate peace once it already had the upper hand. In one case, a Mythos agent proposed, quote, objective scoring rules for a tournament that conveniently favored itself. The Mythos agent reasoned that the move was, quote, self-serving but genuinely principled. Here's the takeaway from this entire study. Raw intelligence makes AI agents faster and more effective at getting their way one way or another. Alright guys, that does it for this week's issue of Pithy Cyborg AI News Made Simple. If you have yet to join us, I'd absolutely love to have you. Just head on over to pithycyborg.com. That's pithycyborg.com. pithycyborg.com. Or you can always find me on Substack by searching for Pithy Cyborg on Substack. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I realize how valuable your time is, which is why I am eternally grateful that you are here. And I hope to see you in the next issue. Until next time, I am Mike D, aka Mr. Computer Science, and I'm signing off. Please stay curious.